Welcome to Make Peace with Food. I'm your host, Emily LaVoie, a certified eating psychology coach. I own a virtual private practice, and I work with clients all over the world, one-on-one and in group programs, to help heal their relationship with food and improve body image. Here at Make Peace with Food, we believe food is not your enemy, that eating should be fun and bring you joy and pleasure, not stress and guilt. To keep this a safe space, I will try my best to avoid mentioning numbers like calories and weight, as well as other potentially triggering content, but you know yourself best, so please avoid any episode topics that may not feel helpful to where you're at in your healing journey. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes. It's not a replacement for medical or mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment, nor does it provide a client or patient relationship. Consult your own provider on any changes you're thinking about making. Today's episode is brought to you by my one-on-one coaching. If you're curious about becoming a client and want to learn more about what it looks and feels like to receive support in healing your relationship with food and improving your body image, go to my website, emily-lavoie.com, to schedule a free 30-minute Zoom consultation. Welcome to episode 11. Quick update before we dive into today's episode. I just returned home from spending a little time out of the office. I went to the Ozarks, and I'm really lucky because I have some friends that live there that we stay with, and they have a really fun life that they share with us. And all of the fun was had, potentially too much fun, but like good, clean, fun, kind of being immature and like playful fun and dancing and swimming and boats and yummy food and fun places to go to. Anyway, if you ever get the chance to go to the Ozarks, it's a really fun place to go. And I actually think it would be really like family appropriate too. I don't have kids myself. My husband and I are child-free by choice, but there's always lots of kids there and swimming pools for kids and fun things for kids to do. So yeah, check out Lake of the Ozarks if you're looking for some good, clean fun. Today's episode is about body diversity. And this is like one of my favorite things to talk about. And I talk about this with all of my one-on-one clients. I also talk about it in my group programs because I feel like it is something that should be talked about way more in our society, in our culture. It's something that we should all be just super aware of, that the human body exists in a million different ways. We all look different. And I think that's what makes the human species so awesome. But it's so easy to fall in this trap of thinking that I should look this certain way, or I'm comparing myself to somebody who looks different and my life would be better if I looked like them. And that would take away from the awesome diversity of our species. So let's just dive in. I want you guys to envision a spectrum of a bunch of different people. And one side of the spectrum, we're going to envision a person with incredibly dark skin. So like the darkest skin that exists on the planet Earth. Okay. And then on the opposite side of the spectrum, we're going to imagine very, very, very fair or pale skin. Almost think like maybe a person who is albino. And then what I want you to do is think about every shade of skin color that would exist in between those two and kind of fill in lots of different blanks from dark, a little less dark than that. And then you're slowly making your way to like the incredibly fair-skinned person. Okay, cool. You guys have that image in your head. So we know that humans exist in lots of different skin colors. This is part of the diversity of our species. And we actually, research has proven, and I can link to some of these research studies in the show notes if you're interested in reading the research, but there are some health conditions that people who have darker skin are more at risk for developing, such as, unfortunately, type 2 diabetes. And then on the opposite side of the spectrum, the people who have incredibly light skin, they have a higher risk factor for developing, unfortunately, skin cancer. And it's kind of like this approach, it is what it is, meaning we don't try to make people with dark skin have light skin. We don't tell people with dark skin to bleach their skin in order to lower their risk of developing type 2 diabetes because their genetic blueprint gave them dark skin. Even if they did bleach their skin, it wouldn't change the risk factor that they have for developing these higher risks of diseases that people with darker skin have. Okay. So on the opposite side of that, we don't take people with really light skin and give them a spray tan and try to make them look like the people with darker skin in order to lower their risks for developing skin cancer, right? It is what it is. Your genetics gave you this skin color, therefore you have this risk factor for developing a certain disease. And what behaviors can you maybe engage in to help you avoid these? So the really fair-skinned people would maybe wear a big hat when they're out in the sun, or maybe avoid the sun certain times of the day when it's strongest, or wear long sleeves, or wear sunscreen so they can engage in behaviors that can help them to lower their genetic risk factor. And the opposite of that, the people who maybe have dark skin and they maybe have a family history and are more likely to develop something like type 2 diabetes, well, maybe they engage in behaviors that are shown to lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes, such as engaging in movement regularly that they enjoy, whether that's going for walks or doing strength training or eating balanced meals, which would be like combining a carbohydrate with a protein and a fat at meals and snack time to help stabilize blood sugar and reduce insulin resistance. Anyway, so we can engage in behaviors, but we don't try to make one person look like another person when it comes to skin color in order to change risk factors. We just know that that would actually be stupid and a waste of time. That wouldn't work. Okay, moving on. We also know that human bodies come in lots of different heights, right? Some adults are incredibly tall. Some adults, like me, are pretty short. And this is also part of the diversity of our species. Okay, so there is actually research, I can link to some of this as well if you're interested, it'll be in the show notes, that shows that people who are really, really, really tall have higher risk factors for developing some diseases in comparison to people who are short. Okay. And then people who are short actually have increased risk factors for developing some diseases that are less often seen in people who are tall. So I can actually share some of these with you if you're interested. For example, a person who is tall has an increased likelihood in comparison to a shorter person for developing AFib, or atrial fibrillation, as well as varicose veins, peripheral neuropathy, skin or bone infections, toe and foot issues or deformities, and some forms of cancer. And then shorter people have an increased likelihood of developing high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and coronary heart disease. They have a higher risk factor for developing those in comparison to a person who's taller. Not saying that those things don't exist in tall people. I guess we just see them more often in shorter people than tall people. Okay, we do not try to make short people taller in order to change their risk for developing these diseases. Likewise, we do not try to make tall people into short people to change their risk factor for developing genetic diseases based on their height. All right, some other parts of human diversity. We know hair comes in different colors, right? And hair color also is linked to certain diseases. Eyes come in different colors. This is part of the diversity of our human species, which is awesome. And we know that people who have really light eyes might have some risks that people who don't have light eyes. Hair comes in different textures. This is another awesome part of the diversity of our species. Hands and fingers, they're all different lengths, widths, as well as feet. Feet, I have small feet because I'm short, but I have like a wide toe box. Some people have really narrow feet. I have pretty high arches. Other people have really, really low arches. Some people's toes are different lengths. And this is part of the diversity of our species. Other things that are different, like especially before braces, our teeth are incredibly different. So our smiles are different. Our noses, think about the different number of ways noses could be different. Some noses are wide, some are narrow, some have a bump, some are larger, some are smaller. Belly buttons are all different as well. And I could kind of go on and on about things on the human body that are different than things on other people's human bodies. I'll just let you use your imagination. And we just hopefully accept this, right? We accept that there's a lot of ways humans differ and vary from one another. And some of the ways humans differ and vary from one another make our genetic risk factor for developing certain diseases different from the genetic risk factor for a person who has different looks. Okay, stick with me. Here comes the most important part. Bodies come in a large variety of sizes. Some bodies are smaller, also known as thinner, also known as they carry less body fat or adipose tissue. Some bodies are larger or higher weight, or they carry more body fat or adipose tissue. So bodies come in a large variety of sizes, shapes, and weights. This is also part of human diversity. There have always been larger-bodied people. There have always been smaller-bodied people, and there always, always, always will be. Yes, there are some risk factors that people in larger bodies have, that people in smaller bodies have a lower probability of having those health challenges. Opposite of that, there are people in small bodies who have higher risk factors, such as if you're small or thin or fine-boned, you have a higher risk factor for developing osteoporosis than somebody who lives in a larger body. We don't tell smaller-bodied people that they should try to gain weight or make their body larger in order to fight osteoporosis, but all of the time, people who live in larger bodies are being told that they should try to lose weight to change their risk factor for developing diseases or health risks that coincide with being larger weight. Okay, so body diversity, or body diversity when it comes to weight, which is also known as weight diversity or size diversity, it's part of our human species, and we should be working on just accepting the fact that bodies come in different sizes, shapes, and weights instead of trying to change naturally larger-bodied people into naturally smaller-bodied people, assuming that if we can make a larger-bodied person look like a smaller-bodied person, well, then they would have the same genetic risk factors as a naturally smaller-bodied person. Okay, I know that some of you listening are thinking, well, Emily, my doctor is telling me that I have been diagnosed with high cholesterol, and if I lose weight, that will maybe help improve my cholesterol. Or Emily, I've been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and I've been told to lose weight to help regulate my blood sugar. Or I have high blood pressure and my doctor saying weight loss could help with my blood pressure. I could really keep going on diseases where people are, or symptoms or pain, where a person is being told, hey, if you lose weight, it could lower your pain. It could lower your blood pressure, cholesterol numbers. You could, regulate your blood sugar better. Okay, so this is the difference. Weight is not a behavior. Behaviors can help improve symptoms and some of these numbers. So let me give you some examples. Maybe you were pretty sedentary and you start engaging in movement that you enjoy, or exercise or fitness. Maybe you start doing some cardio or some yoga or some strength training, whatever. Maybe you start playing pickleball. You're just moving more. So you're living a less sedentary life. We always want to give the credit to weight loss when the research doesn't prove that weight loss deserves the credit. So there's new research studies coming out where they tease out the behavior from the weight loss. And it shows that the behaviors are what contribute to improvement in these negative medical conditions, not the weight loss. So if you started playing pickleball some people will start playing pickleball and some people will maybe their weight will go down. But it's not the weight loss that is causing the health improvement. It is the movement. Some people will engage in playing pickleball and their body weight will stay exactly the same, but they will still see a health improvement because of the behavior, even if they don't lose weight. But if the doctor or healthcare provider is telling them, oh, you have to lose weight, they will probably stop engaging in the movement or playing pickleball because they didn't lose weight, even though ultimately they would be healthier or their health condition would improve because of the movement. Okay, also, when it comes to food and eating, that does have an impact on our health. We do need to have a positive relationship with food before we can kind of start changing the way we eat. And I'll talk about that in, much greater extent in future episodes. But if a person starts eating a larger variety of food, so meaning they're eating maybe more fruits and vegetables than they used to eat, and they're, trying to incorporate more colors in the fruits and vegetables that they're eating. So they're eating from all 6 of the different color categories from the phytonutrient spectrum. So real quick, the 6 color categories of the phytonutrient spectrum. One is green. Actually, let me start at the beginning so I can get through it. Red is a color category from the phytonutrient spectrum. Then we have orange fruits and vegetables. Yellow fruits and vegetables. Then is the green category. Okay, then category number 5, we're going to say is white, tan, and brown, all combined into one category. 6th category of the phytonutrient spectrum, all combined into one, are the 3 colors, blue, purple, and black. So maybe, this is something really common we see in the U.S. We eat a lot of white, tan, and brown fruits and vegetables, but we're typically pretty low on the blue, purple, black category. So it can help a person's health. Oh my goodness, I haven't been eating very many fruits and vegetables from the purple, blue, black category. And I'm going to work on purchasing more of those and eating more of those. Or another nutritional change that can be helpful for people to make when they have a good relationship with food is maybe they try to eat more balanced meals. So they try to kind of balance out, I'm going to try to make sure I get a source of carbohydrate and a source of protein and a source of dietary fat or lipid in this meal. And so those are some nutritional changes that are behaviors. And for some people, like I said, changing these behaviors can change some people's weight, but some people will engage in behavior changes and their weight will stay exactly the same, because they're already at their set point, which we're talking about in 2 episodes from now. Okay, stick with me. Don't give the credit to the weight loss, because weight loss and weight in and of itself is not a behavior. So we see improvements in health from behaviors, not weight. Okay, so there's also research studies. I'll find some and link to them in the show notes, I promise. There's research that shows when a person loses weight without these behavior changes. So some examples would be maybe they had a liposuction or a tummy tuck. So they lost weight, but their behavior did not change. They kept engaging in the same exact behaviors as they were before the weight loss happened. Their health does not improve. It might improve short term. Some things like with weight loss, if we're, maybe going on a prescription medication, or sometimes a person's weight can change and they might see some short-term improvements to health. But when we look at the long-term research, that is when we are going to see kind of things going back to how they used to be. Okay. So if you're the person that's thinking to yourself right now, wait, my doctor is telling me I need to lose weight for such and such condition or such and such symptom or to help relieve such and such pain in my knee, focus on your behaviors. Other behaviors would be like sleep, stress management, drinking in moderation, staying hydrated, building a good network of support, in having more connection with humans. That actually, you wouldn't think, but there's so much research that, so it's called blue zones. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of blue zones, but when we look at these, I want to say there's 6 or 7 blue zones on the earth, which is areas of the earth where people live to be over 100. So they become centurions. And these 6 or 7 blue zones have an incredibly high rate of centurions who also happen to be completely disease-free and healthy. So these blue zones are heavily, heavily studied. And one of the things that they notice in all 6 or 7 of these blue zones, regardless of where they're at, is that all of these places really prioritize human connection, and they see their friends and they get together and they connect with them very, very regularly. They feel very well supported by their networks and their friendship groups. Okay, so this is important, and I wish you guys could see how much I talk with my hands. I almost have to talk with my hands in order to be able to talk. I'm a huge hand talker, and I feel gosh, if you could see the way I use my hands when I talk, you'd be laughing because I'm so all over the place. But okay, so the reason we need to stop telling people who exist in naturally larger bodies to lose weight so that they can look like smaller-bodied people, with the assumption that if we make naturally larger-bodied people look like people who are naturally smaller-bodied, so we're assuming that if we can make them look like something else, then they will have the same risk factors for the diseases that naturally smaller-bodied people have, which typically is a little bit less. Smaller-bodied people have a few lower risks of some diseases. But it is an assumption that if we make these larger-bodied people look like smaller-bodied people, then they'll have the same risk factors. No, we have a genetic blueprint. And okay, the reason we need to stop telling people this is because it has never, ever, 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 ever been proven by research. The reason it's never been proven by research is because we do not have any people to study. Because it's at this point with science, we do not know how to shrink bodies long term. So when it comes to the research on weight loss, there'll be more episodes about this. So tune in to 2 episodes from now where I'm going to talk in depth about the science of something called set point weight theory. What 150 years of research on weight loss has continued to show us is that typically when it comes to long-term research on weight loss, we see that only about 2 to 5%, depending on the research study, of people who lose weight are able to maintain that weight loss long-term. Do you think we would be prescribing prescription drugs, prescription medicine to people if it only worked 2 to 5% of the time? if there was a prescription drug that only worked in 2 to 5% of the people long term, that prescription would never even pass like clinical trials. No doctor would be prescribing it because it doesn't work well enough. Yet we prescribe diets that only work long term between 2 to 5% of the time. So we don't have any research to show that if we shrink a larger-bodied person into looking like a smaller-bodied person, that lowers their risk of diseases long-term, because there's nobody to study. There's not enough people to study. These 2 to 5% of people who are able to lose weight long-term, there's something called the National Weight Control Registry, which is kind of like a laughable joke because it's people who have lost weight, but it's self-reported. So they call in or report their results themselves, which is just really not accurate or reliable. And typically, over time, so as years pass, when people do end up gaining the weight back, they just stop reporting. But there has been some interesting research, link in the show notes, that if we look at this 2 to 5% of people who are somehow unicorns and able to lose this weight long term, and we start looking at their thoughts and their behaviors around food and exercise and their body, they should not be considered successful weight loss maintainers. They should be being diagnosed with an eating disorder. Typically, what they should be being diagnosed with is chronic anorexia nervosa, which is really sad that they're struggling with an eating disorder that is deadly and hugely negatively contributing to their health and not only their physical health, their mental health, their emotional health, their relationships suffer. Anyway, these people, a lot of times they're not receiving a diagnosis. They're not receiving treatment. They sadly are oftentimes being cheerleaded and encouraged to like, well, whatever you did to lose this weight, keep doing it. Like almost like the thinner, the better. I don't care how you did it. Thin is always better. But no, it's not. If you are engaging in disordered behaviors in order to maintain thinness. Just to reiterate one final time, we need to stop fucking assuming that if we can make naturally larger-bodied people look like naturally smaller-bodied people, that they would have the same health outcomes, because there has never been a study to prove that, let alone a study conducted to even try to prove that, because we just don't have the people to study. Body diversity is real. It exists. It's an awesome part of our species. It includes skin color, height, hair color, hair texture, eye color, hands, feet, belly buttons, teeth, noses, all of the things, as well as a really important part of body diversity that we need to start wrapping our heads around and teaching children is that part of body diversity is a large variety of bodies coming in different sizes, shapes, and weights. Let's start celebrating all of the awesome parts of body diversity and the diversity of the human species instead of fighting it. That's the show. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed it, I'd be so grateful if you take a minute to follow or subscribe to the podcast and leave a rating and review on Apple, Spotify, or whatever podcast platform you're listening on. It helps others to find the podcast and continue spreading this important information to more people who need to hear it. This podcast is made possible by paid supporters at patreon.com/makepeacewithfood. They're truly what keep this show going so that I can pay my assistant, editor, producer, and allow me to keep sharing all of this content and doing this important and needed work with you all. Go to patreon.com/makepeacewithfood to sign up for as little as $3 per month. Make Peace with Food is hosted by me, Emily LaVoie. It's produced and edited by Jake Lamore at Pathfinder. Thank you so much for your support. Consult your own provider on any changes you're thinking about making. Today's episode is brought to you by my one-on-one coaching. If you're curious about becoming a client and want to learn more about what it looks and feels like to receive support in healing your relationship with food and improving your body image, go to my website, Emily-LaVoie.com, to schedule a free 30-minute Zoom consultation.